Hi there, and welcome back to the world of Excel VBA coding. We are heading back to the basics of VBA coding with how to reference, save, name, and password protect workbooks. Learning this the correct way will really help you in your future coding journey. So let's VBA. We will begin with workbooks and how to reference them. There are several ways to reference a workbook, and I will explain the best use of each. Let's open the VBA editor and insert a module. We will add a sub that we will call sub WB reference. Now I like to add my note just so I can keep up with what I'm doing here. First, the Workbooks.Open code is so useful to know. With this code, you can open any workbook as long as you know where it is stored. I have this example, Workbooks.Open. Then you do parentheses, quote, and you put in your file address. Close your quotation, close your parentheses. And now the biggest issue I have with this is getting the right address for the file. Use your File Explorer to copy the address and then add the name of your file plus the .xlsx or whatever the file type is. So when I run this, you can see it opens up this new file that I have. Next, we want to be able to close a workbook. You can use this same code, but put a .close instead of the .open, and then we've got to get rid of the file path, and we need to move this entire thing over here. Basically, you're telling it which workbook to close. So when I run this, you will see that now my Let's VBA file is now closed. Now, I went ahead and reopened this file just so we can play with it for the rest of this code. So another powerful part of workbook referencing is the .activate code. This will make the referenced workbook the active workbook, which is a really great when you need to reference it without being directly in it. And basically the code is workbooks, and then you put the name of the workbook, .activate. So now when I run this, it just makes it the active workbook. So anything I'm referencing towards it will be directly on that one. Now you can also directly reference the workbook that holds this macro by using this workbook.activate. You could also do .save. You've got several options, but by using this workbook, you're talking about the workbook that holds this macro code. It's really great when you're switching between workbooks. There's another way to reference a workbook, and that is with its index number. Basically, the index number is the order in which the workbooks were opened. The reference looks like this. Workbooks, parenthesis, let's say 1.save. I will say that I never use this one. It is too risky to know or even remember what order you opened your workbooks, and you can risk running code on the wrong one. If you find yourself having to reference multiple workbooks, the easiest thing to do is to set a variable for each workbook. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete out the code we've already put in. Now we can dim workbook 1 as workbook and dim workbook 2 as workbook. Then set each to the name of the workbook that you want to reference it to. Set workbook 1 equal to active workbook, or you could put this workbook. And then set workbook 2 equal to workbooks, parentheses, quote, and I'll use our file that we were using before, close quote, close parentheses. Now from here, you can do something as simple as workbook1.save and workbook2.save. VBA.activate. Save. When we run this, you're not really going to see anything happen, but now our Let's VBA file is now considered the active workbook. What happens if you want to add a new workbook from your code? You might ask yourself why you would need to do this, but let me tell you that I do this a lot. I create a lot of macros where I want to take data from my main workbook and put it into a report structure that can then be saved and emailed to the recipient. We do this with something called Workbooks.Add. It's really as simple as that. Now, once you do the workbooks.add, then you usually need to reference this. This new workbook doesn't have a name yet, so you can create a variable that references this new workbook by dimming workbook as workbook and set WB workbook equal to workbooks.add. This will automatically reference your new workbook. So with WB or workbook, and then I'm going to end with, let's say dot sheets. We'll say 1, meaning the first sheet there, dot range A1 equals hello. Now, when we run this, you will see that we have a new workbook that is created, and in cell A1, we have the word hello. Pretty cool, huh? You can also take out some of this code by directly doing it with the new workbook like this. I could simply take all this out and do with workbooks.add. And this will give you the same exact thing. So when we run it, we see we have another workbook open and we have hello in cell A1. This is my preferred method since I usually want to add a workbook and then immediately copy and paste data to it. A big one is how to save a workbook. As we saw before, the .save code will save the existing workbook back to its original location. What if it is a brand new workbook that you just created? Well, if you do the .save, it will save it, but it will save it as just a book number. To name it, you will need to add a .SaveAs. So with our same code here, do a new line and do .SaveAs, and then you're going to name it. This will typically save it to your documents, but you can also designate the file path like we did when we were opening an existing workbook. For instance, workbooks.saveas, and then we put the file path in parentheses and put where you want it to save, and then close the parentheses. Now this will add the workbook, put hello in cell A1, and then it's going to save it back to our documents where we wanted it to go. So if I run this, you will see the file was created and the name is Let's VBA again, and it has saved it back to our documents. Another cool coding trick I have done for my clients is to password protect my workbooks. Super easy to do by just typing ThisWorkbook.Protect, and then you can add a password by doing quotes, my workbook, end quotes. Just remember that you may have some issues with code that will not run properly on a protected sheet. However, if you find that this is an issue, then just unprotect the workbook, run your code, then protect again. And the way you can unprotect it is just instead of protect, it would be unprotect. It's easy as that. Now that you have the basics to know how to work with your workbooks, you can move forward with your coding adventures. Please be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more Excel VBA tutorials. Leave me a message in the comments section if you have any questions or topic suggestions. Have a great day.